Hello and welcome to this video where I'm going to be talking about what exactly is spiritual divination. Now, when I say spiritual divination, of course I have created this term myself, and so I'm speaking basically just of my subjective opinion, of course, and what is YouTube for, right? But on a more serious note, it is something which I have spent probably 10 years now slowly developing and understanding and working at to really find a more meaningful and deeper use for my tarot readings, because I have been doing tarot for over 20 years now. And so when I first started, I was young, I might have been 12 or 13 when I first got my first deck of cards. And luckily, I happened to be around a lot of people who are also very into the occult and divination and things like that. I happen to live next to Salem, Massachusetts, in the United States, which is a big witch town, historically, of course, with the witch trials and all of that, which created a very big occult social scene over there as well. And so when I was younger, I was super intrigued and curious by that, and lucky enough that I was in a neighboring town and, could go over and speak with people and seek knowledge in different ways and have access to all kinds of different little shops and things like that, where you get to learn things that maybe everybody couldn't learn. And I definitely started off using tarot and thinking about tarot or oracle cards about future telling or being a fortune teller, that it was something that you would ask direct questions about your life, about tomorrow, about next year, or about people around you, or what was going to happen in the world and stuff. And for probably the first 5 to 7 years of me doing tarot and learning about it, I was very much just kind of on that surface level, doing readings and work and hearing and absorbing that kind of more mature knowledge about structure and spirituality and a real deep connection with your deck, and a working with a communion. Because when I did start it, I mean, there's older people always telling you, don't use them selfishly, don't use them for self-gratification, and all these kinds of rules and these taboo things that go along with occult tools, right? Or witchcraft, or whatever you choose to call these things. There's most certainly an undertone of a cyclic sort of rules, structuring, energetic balancing that takes place with the exchange of information and knowledge that we're using when we tap in to source through the cards. So I couldn't really grasp that being young and being in the places that I was in my own spiritual journey at that time. But over, years, like I said, this has been like a 20-year development, and especially over the last maybe 5-7 years, it's become much more clear to me that this spiritual divination is where my path is taking me, and where my practice and communication with the cards is really taking me. And so I wanted to use this video as a quick way to share that sort of foundation that I've built on spiritual divination. And maybe you might be interested as well in starting your own more grounded centered foundation to work with if you do tarot on your own. Or perhaps you're interested in doing shadow work and internal seeking, introspection, and so you're looking for readings that are more in depth. Maybe you've looked on YouTube already and seen the mainstream pool of tarot, and it is very surface level. It is very materialistically based 3D questioning going on, definitely on YouTube. So that's another reason that I really started this channel, is because I saw like kind of a gap of information where people who are seeking deeper are going to miss out, because if you're in the mainstream and you've had enough of it and you're ready to look for more, it's kind of hard to find it, especially in the realm of divination, specifically with tarot cards or oracle cards, angel cards, whatever you're privy to. So yeah, I really wanted to give an introduction and open up an area where we can explore and examine a more deep and rich space to operate and ask for guidance from. And so that is pretty much the first thing that I will say about spiritual divination, is that it is a groundworking space for shadow work or spiritual evolution, right? If those kind of terms are new to you, then definitely plug them into your search on whatever channel that you like, and see what people are saying about shadow work and about introspection. I also have wonderful tools on amariespeaks.com that will give you tips and ways to work with your shadow, identify it, understand what it is, because a greater knowledge base really opens up our possibilities for making better choices, more wise choices, which I think really should be what the foundation, right, of creating spiritual groundwork is. We're seeking knowledge, understanding, better ways of listening and incorporating information for our soul's benefit, so that when we interact with people in our relationships, in our direct world, or we are experiencing things from the very external world, taking in information, say, from the news media or whatever kind of channels that you bring in news from, outside information, right? You are more steady and more balanced to be able to take in the information, make judgments for yourself, critically think, and weed out the nonsense, right? So when we work with spiritual divination, it really is a honing or a toning of a muscle to get to understand what your spiritual tie to truth feels like, and what your guidance sounds like, and how to hear it, because it is definitely a skill that is super unique to each person. And so it becomes difficult, sometimes even overwhelming, to find your language, because it is so personal to you. That's another great part about spiritual divination, working with tarot, oracle cards, or numerology and astrology, really, because it excuse me, it offers working points that you can dig at yourself when you have comfortability, when you have time and opportunities, to peel back as you can, because these things take time. And that's kind of my second step or understanding about spiritual divination, is that it is a working that is supposed to be understood and gone into with the knowing that change takes place over time, that knowledge and understanding, true sight, is only something that develops over time. It has to be tested, worked through, and found inside, right? Because it is so unique to each of us. And so when you go into a reading, or you're going to ask the cards for guidance or advice, go into it like it is a spiritual act. And you're going to get more out of it, right? Because if you go into just a quick reading and you're just asking questions, flipping cards, you're really going into that reading on that shallow level, right? You're almost seeking answers, like seeking confirmation to what you already know, glazing over the top as you see it. And instead of riding inside of it and allowing and hearing what the cards are saying and cresting it through your own knowledge, it opens up a larger world of working, a more deeper sense of self, if you choose to use your cards in that way. If you choose to use it as a spiritual connection versus, okay, let me just go ask confirmation of what I think I already want to hear or what I think I already know. Sometimes it's even tricky because your shadow or your ego can be kind of whispering in things that make you go into a reading with expectations. And that gets into very tricky ground because Source and the universe, the card, spirit, whatever you're choosing to acknowledge as that world, it really is a part of you. It wants to please you. It loves you. It sees your perspective and with empathy. And so when you go into a reading with expectations or intentions, they're going to gear their answers towards that because they love you and they want to provide understanding information to you, which is inside of your level. I love that kind of Christian thing, that quote that God only puts on you what he knows you can handle. I'm not like a religious person and I don't really subscribe to a construct of God, but I do believe in that underlying scientific frequency type of information that's hiding in that quote, which is that your consciousness can only take on, understand, and process the level that you're at, right? Like you can't teach a kindergartner calculus. You can't even teach a kindergartner multiplication. You can tell them 2 + 2 is 4. You can show them 2 and get them to count it up to 4 very methodically on their level, right? To get them to grasp that. But to make them a working knowledge of 2 times 25 or 15 times 17, that's way beyond their grasp of knowledge. And so working with tarot and getting information from Source and from Spirit, and as well as your life path in general, all follow this same energetic rule, this same consciousness bubble of where you're encompassed within. And so recognizing that, accepting it, and working within yourself to identify, the real spectrum that you're on is really a super helpful spot to get into before you go into readings or before you really work with tarot, because it sets that beautiful spiritual foundation, and it really gives you a better opportunity to hear more clearly. Another thing that I will add to that, or which is kind of part 3 to this, is that structural setting and creating that container for seeking. And by that I mean going into readings with a purpose. That can be a spread, a specific question. It can be just an intention, an energetic intention even. But it is important if you want good results. It's important if you want to provide as much clarity as possible that you set the structuring up in the first place, because it really allows Source to funnel down its infinite wisdom in a way that can really be as beneficial to you and whoever you're doing the reading for. And this is something I'm going to make a video all about: spreads and readings and working with energetic intentions, setting the space when you go into readings, in another video, because that's super lengthy and individual. It varies based on what kind of readings, who you're doing readings for, and all these things. So I just want to, on the ground level, set an awareness for you so that you can go digging on your own and see where your energetic comfortability lies, what kind of intentions you most oftenly go into readings with, working with understanding what kind of knowledge you're seeking and what kind of work you're doing when you are reading, or when you're asking or seeking somebody to do a reading for you, because maybe you don't do tarot on your own. Maybe you like tarot, or you get readings a lot, and that's fine. That's beautiful. But to go into them with an understanding of why you're seeking, and what kind of emotion or energetic responses you're seeking is very helpful, because sometimes you go into it with questions. You know the words, you know the information, the kind of logical thing. Maybe you're facing a problem, very specific problems in your real world, right? So you may go into readings seeking guidance on that. But the important thing is that if first you can tap into what the energetic imbalance is in your problem, what the real kind of lesson, moral, emotional tanglements that are taking place within your problem. Think about those things first and be seeking and understanding in that area before you go into the reading. You will get responses back that become more clear in their solutions. Because sometimes when you go into tarot or oracle cards with a question or a problem very prominent, the cards kind of just repeat that problem back to you. They just say, we see your problem, in this card, in this way, in this card, in this way. And you're like, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I know. Thank you for the confirmation, but can I have something new, please? Right? And it's hard to get into that, getting these solutions out of the readings when you go into readings with just the energetic intention of the problem. If instead you gear into that internal, okay, I'm looking for a new job, but internally it's because I am unhappy with the job I'm in because it feels draining, or because I'm not using my degree or my talent, or because I'm working with people who are energetically incompatible with me, or I'm working in an industry that I just don't feel that I resonate with. If you instead tap into the kind of causation of what is the underlying issue really, and then do the reading, then ask the cards for advice or guidance from that space, you'll see much different answers. You will see less of that repetition of the problem, that mirroring back of the obvious. When you first create that spiritual space of seeking true answers, it can be very difficult. And that's why sometimes basic shadow work on your own, or having spiritual practices of your own on different time other than readings, can be really helpful and beneficial to your tarot readings and to you being a reader, or when you go into readings or seek guidance in any way. Having that basis in the works and making small practice points every day to be connected with yourself, and like self-love and, your source connection or your faith, whatever it might be, your family, your children, your love of your life, or even just yourself, you know, or pets or whatever. Get into that daily practice, tapping into a space of love and listening truly to hear. And you'll see the workings popping through with the readings becoming more clear, more easy, more intuitive little insights coming through when you are doing your readings. And the last thing I really want to go over in this video, it's already 20 minutes and I wanted to keep it quick for just the basics here, is kind of what is not spiritual divination. And what that is it is not a fortune-telling, seeking direct answers for specifics in the future. It is not asking about whether this boyfriend or girlfriend is true to you, or whether or not your best friend is lying about X, Y, and Z. It cannot be focused on gossip, drama, externally focused, controlling ways. A seeking of restrictive control on others. If you so choose to use it in that way, just understand that you're building a resonance or a polarity of a relationship between yourself and the cards when you do that. And they are going to mirror that back at you. And it can create a very negative, very vicious cycle, which is almost a beacon and honing in of negativity in other ways as well. Other sources and entities and all types of varieties. So unless you want to create a beacon for negative things, negative seeking, polarity, I definitely would not suggest going into readings for self-gratification, self-service, because you will end up with a lot of prickly problems. Another thing that I would say quickly that is definitely not spiritual divination is I don't want to offend, I hate to offend or tell people what to do either. So again, I want to reiterate that when I'm talking about spiritual divination, and this is my personal practice, it is based off of my beliefs, which also I really don't like the word beliefs because it has a lie right in the middle, right? So, but it's a structural basis, an alignment of orientation, of polarity seeking, and I choose to operate on a service to others perspective where I feel it's most beneficial to go into divination from a place of help, seeking to understand others, provide real solutions, real understanding to when a uncomfortable problem, an ugly thing in the dark and inside your shadow work pops up, excuse me, to use tarot to actually identify, pull back, shine a light on that problem and work to solve it at that moment. Not to make excuses, not to add it to a to-do list for later, not to put it off, not to say, oh yeah, but that's just my thing right there, and I'm really light over here, so, you know, I don't need to work on that right now. Spiritual divination is really about doing it right now. It's really about assessing where you're at the moment as it is for it is. Because sometimes tarot and oracle cards can get very into the realm of spiritual bypassing. The overly light work side of it. And balance is everything, right? So this is another thing that I think is just super prevalent in the world today, because now so many have realized the spiritual bypassing. And so the newest thing is the pointing out of everyone who's doing it, everyone who still has shadow, who's pretended that they didn't. And that is helpful and useful, I guess, in its way and in its workings. But it's mostly just important to remember when you're doing it on your own. That's, and to say, oh, let me actually address this right now. Because that's really where you put an end and a stop to that bypassing, is to not allow yourself to be lazy in your energetic work and in your balancing. When catalysts, problems, when shadows pop up, when there's something uncomfortable, you look at it right then. You assess it right then. You don't glaze over it and brush it off. You look at it for what it is, and you work at it at that second. And so that really, I feel, when you're going into spiritual divination and you're doing readings for people, they should be ready to do the work. They should understand what the work is and also be willing to do it, and to do it tomorrow and Friday and next week and in a month from now and in a year from now. Because when Source offers us these information, especially through tarot, it is so what's the right word? It's like a riddle, It's something that builds over time, or like a poem or a beautiful song. The lyrics can play in a different way every time you hear it. It can mean different things when you listen next time. And so, to close, I really want to just reiterate and lay down the important underlying message with what is spiritual divination, which is, it is the willingness to do the work and to see it for what it is, as well as that intention or longing to really see the truth in yourself, in others, in the world, in the cards, and to, no matter what it is, be ready to face it, be ready to accept it and work with it. Because if you can get into that space of shadow work bravery, the courage that it takes to look at your own ish and with a loving eye, without the critiques, and to own it and accept it. That's really what it's all about. So if you've listened to my whole video, thank you so much. I hope it's been enlightening and educational. If spiritual divination is something new to you and you have other questions, definitely leave them in the comments, because I would love to answer them if possible. I'm definitely going to make some further videos and dive more deeply into card care and spreads, card meanings. So be sure to tune in next time. Thank you so much for joining me.